Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman, and just doing a quick video. This is a response to Wise Monkey's tag, and concerning Job. It's a pretty interesting topic, and I don't think anybody has an answer to suffering. One answer. If there's 6 billion people on the earth, there's 6 billion Jobs and 6 billion answers to suffering, and we each do it in our own way, and we each write our own Job stories of suffering by the lives that we live and the choices that we make, and by the situation that we find ourselves in, either by our own doings or by fate. And I'm using fate here simply because it's easier to use. I think the text of Job doesn't really have a literary format, although there are a lot of similarities with the structure of Job with ancient Near Eastern literature. One of the Ugaritic texts, Keret, K-E-R-E-T, it's an excellent Canaanite text about a suffering man who has everything taken from him because he fails to honor a goddess in a proper way, and he gets everything back. Also, from reading Greek tragedies of Euripides, I've seen a lot of similarities going back and reviewing Job. And a lot of times in those plays and tragedies, they're dealing with social and political issues, and they're banking the story to the way they want it to go, which I believe happened in the first couple chapters, the prologue of Job, and in the last chapter of Job, the beginning and the end. Could have been a folk tale, simply because in real life you don't get everything back. So here's this huge discourse on suffering, and some scholars believe, we don't know for sure, this could represent Israel in exile. Job being Israel, the friends being the prophets. A righteous person suffering. And this even becomes larger when you get to the period of forced Hellenization by Antiochus IV on the Jews. You can read about that in the text of Maccabees, or Maccabees. So, take a look at that. And throughout the literature, even though they say that Job is patient and you should wait out the divine beings, that everything has a master plan, in this text, if you read it all the way through, not just the beginning until you get bored and then you skip to the end, you read that Job was not so patient. And you can see this in chapter 10. And this is where I'm at right now concerning these ideas in my mind. It's what I'm asking the divine, if he exists. And probably one of my pleas is, are not the days of my life few? This is Job 10:20. Let me alone, that I may find a little comfort before I go, never to return again, but go down to the land of gloom and deep darkness, the land of gloom and chaos, where light is like darkness. So here Job is saying, I can't put you on trial, because who would you answer to? Just leave me alone for a little while, and before I die. You get the same impression from texts like the Preacher or Ecclesiastics. When you read that, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Some of my favorite texts. There's also an interesting part in the Iliad that I found where Zeus is lamenting the fate of men and suffering. When the horses cry over Patroclus after his death, the divine steeds, the immortal horses. Beautiful story. And Zeus pities them. And just reading out of the Iliad, this is Iliad lines 426 and following. Zeus stirred his head and spoke to his own spirit, "Poor wretches, why then did we ever give you to the Lord Peleus, a mortal man? And you yourselves are immortal and ageless, only so that among unhappy men you also might be grieved, since among all creatures that breathe on the earth and crawl on it, there is not anywhere a thing more dismal than man is." So even Homer, with his poetic elegance, addresses this issue of suffering. And here, even creatures weep for fallen heroes that have met their end. So, we are not gods to know our end or our fates. We are not divine beings. And even though some claim to have all the answers to the hereafter, I suspect maybe they do not. And I am agnostic for that reason, that I like to be pleasantly surprised. And I'm kind of a pessimistic. So, I hope I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I think that when living the Job tragedy, each of us in our lives, we come out to some sort of understanding of ourselves. And the prologue of Job might be positive in that it's a stripping away of all the cares of this life. And maybe Eastern thought had it right, had this idea. Stripping away of things to where the world is stripped, even down to yourself, and the self is being stripped and cut away, to where you finally have to deal with the self and deal with the question of suffering. And through that agony and through that suffering, it's also a type of catharsis that when you come out the other side, maybe you don't gain the material things back, but you gain back, you reclaim the chaos, and you turn it into order. So, I just find it really fascinating that when you hear Christian teachers on this text mention suffering, they talk about the patience of Job, when if you continue to read and you continue to look around you at the 6 billion Jobs, they don't all turn out the same way. Some of us have worse fates than others, and some of us have worse ends than others. But just like in verse 10, chapter 10 of Job, "Are not the days of my life few? Let me alone, that I might find a little comfort." Take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking